gotta kick things off with Inside Out. Personifying emotions is such a Pixar move. This movie came out back in 2015. I could just tell by watching the trailers that Pixar was back up to their quality that they started off at. Personifying emotions is such a Pixar move that, like, if any other animation studio even attempted to try it, it would just be weird. I like how moving is like a big metaphor for growing up, but we've all in our lives at some point been emotionally unstable to the point where it leads to a hasty and stupid decision. At that point, we're running on just a handful of emotions and not the ones that we consider to be the most helpful. The message that joy would mean nothing without sadness is one of the deepest messages in an animated movie. Amy Poehler, Phyllis Smith, Bill Hader, Lewis Black, it's a murderous role of voice talent. This movie easily earned the Oscar for Best Animated Feature back in 2015 and really should have won it unanimously. If you're emotionally on edge, give this a watch. It'll make you feel like you're not alone. And to wrap things up, I would talk a little bit about how much I love Bing Bong, but I don't want to spiral into, a sobbing mess, so I'm just going to go ahead and move the fuck on. Okay, I have to start by saying that I hold one hell of a grudge against this movie for beating my Shrek 2 back at the Academy in 2004 for Best Animated Feature. But we'll overlook that right now because it is The Incredibles. I believe it to be the best animated superhero movie that I've ever seen. Yes, better than Spider-Verse. And this is 100% gotta be Pixar's most mature film. Between all the fighting, explosions, and the deep dive into Helen and Bob's marriage, it really doesn't get any more mature. The movie focuses more on the family and relationship aspect opposed to the action and superhero aspect, which I really, really love. But due to the maturity of it, it's really no surprise that it was Pixar's first ever PG movie. Up until then, everything was rated G for general audience. If you haven't seen it since you were a kid, you really, really got to go back and watch it because, it just screams at you as an adult. It also took that extra step for Pixar and had humans as its main characters. So it was a more than ambitious movie for them at the time. The characters really make the movie. The Parr family is super iconic. I love how all of their superpowers match up to their personalities and their titles in the family. Gotta give a shout out to Edna Mode, one hell of a character and the greatest costume designer of all time. She was some hard comic relief, and I love that the director Brad Bird did the voice for her. I guess he really just knocks everything out of the park. But what really, really sets this movie apart from all the other Pixar movies and will forever set it apart is it has the best villain in Syndrome that any Pixar movie really think will ever have. His motives are so there that you really almost don't want to blame him for what he's doing. Jason Lee, I love you, man. My Name is Earl is probably my favorite live action show. Hats off to you and your performance as Syndrome. Perfect casting choice. It feels like his dream was to always be in like a superhero movie or be a comic book character or something because he really, really just gets into this so hard. I could go on about Syndrome specifically forever, but that might just be another video in of itself. He's one of my favorite movie villains of all time, and because of that alone, The Incredibles easily made this top 5 list. Monsters, Inc. is the first Pixar movie that I can remember that just tugged back and forth at my heartstrings. Before Monsters, Inc., we had a couple Toy Story movies and A Bug's Life, and yeah, the second Toy Story movie can get a little bit emotional, but if they were trying to make you cry in Toy Story 2 with Jesse's backstory, then they were really trying to make you sob erratically with Boo and Sully's relationship. Pete Docter's first attempt at directing a Pixar movie was a success, got them their first Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature. And who did they lose to? Who did they lose to? Shrek, damn it. They lost to fucking Shrek, take that shit. And like Shrek, it's the funniest movie ever produced by its company. Whenever somebody asks me what's the funniest Pixar movie, immediately I'm telling you Monsters, Inc. John Goodman and Billy Crystal, dude. Steve Buscemi too. Get the fuck out of here. There's just as much development in Mike and Sully's relationship as much as there is in Boo and Sully's, and I'm really, really happy that they honed in on both. Mike and Celia's relationship calls for some great laughs, and that freaking news scene. Dude, I'm in tears laughing every single time. I don't care if I know every word to it. Every time I watch it, I'm gonna be smiling, I'm gonna be chuckling and cutting the fuck up. Any encounter between Mike and Roz is a guaranteed laugh. Dude, the first 10 minutes of Boo's screen time is fucking hysterical. Boo is really one of the most heart-melting characters in animation. The idea of monsters being in our closet has haunted the minds of little kids for a long time. This is one of those instances where Pixar took something that everybody could relate to and made it family-friendly and answered questions on it. We wouldn't have wanted anybody but Pixar to answer the question of what those monsters are doing behind our closet doors. You guys, whenever Sully says bye to Boo at the end of the movie, it is one of the most tear-jerking Pixar moments to this day. The reuniting at the very end of the movie is just as tear-jerking. I love that Mike is such a great friend that he's the one who goes out of his way to get all that wood together just to put Boo's door back together for Sully. The relationships in this movie are insane. Both of the villains in the movie are insanely great. Randall is scary. Waternoose is the best twist villain. The technology of this movie was super revolutionary. There was over 1 million hairs that were meticulously placed all over Sully's body. And I mean, if you don't respect that, you can just go ahead and fucking click off this damn video. Don't really do that. Overall, Monsters, Inc. really showed how funny and heartfelt a Pixar movie could get, and that's the reason why it sits at number 3 on my personal list. Moving on to fucking number shit. You know, it's said that whenever Andrew Stanton pitched this movie to John Lasseter at Pixar, Lasseter then responded with, "You had me at fish." Finding Nemo addressed physical disability, mental disability, family loss. Everyone wants to give up all this praise and all this credit for making you cry in the first 10 minutes whenever Finding Nemo does that in half the time. The story and the writing of this movie is a lot more dramatic than all the other Pixar movies before it. The movie focuses really hard at times to speak to parents personally. All 3 of the main characters, Marlin, Dory, and Nemo, they all have a setback at the very beginning of their introduction. They all overcome said setback by the end of the movie. Stanton really couldn't have delivered anything any more perfect. This movie pushed computer animation the furthest it had ever been pushed at this time, considering it's the first computer animated movie to take place underwater. One thing you gotta love about Pixar is with every single movie that they released back in the day, they were shooting to make something technologically revolutionary for the industry. Very few animation companies would even have attempted to make a computer animated movie that took place underwater, because of how difficult and expensive that shit has to be. You can tell that the animators really did their research with this one. It earned Pixar their first Oscar for Best Animated Feature back in 2003, and it started Pixar's domination of that category for years to come. Crush is freaking cool, and I love how Andrew Stanton, the director, does the voice for him. Gil is a badass, and I'd love to know his backstory. Nigel's lovable because of how helpful he is. The little mine seagulls are fucking hilarious. I could go on and on forever about how the side characters for Finding Nemo are amazing. Finding Nemo is the first of its kind. It's visually the most stunning Pixar movie to this day. The story has the perfect amount of heart and drama, which is why it takes my spot as number 2 for the greatest Pixar movie of all time. Here for just a split second, I want to have an honorable mention, and that honorable mention is Ratatouille. Ratatouille just barely missed this list, and I want to take a second to talk a little bit about it because of how relatable Remy's character is. Remy is so relatable in that he has such a desire to create, and I am that same way. The message behind Ratatouille is one of the most important messages in animated movies. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what other people say. If you have a desire and you're passionate enough, you will make it there. Now let's move on to number 1, people. Number one, guys, now come on, we all really should have expected this. Toy Story is Pixar's single greatest accomplishment that they will ever have. If there wasn't a Toy Story, we wouldn't have Pixar movies. We wouldn't have this Pixar quality bar to reach. My rules for this list were one film per franchise, and I really didn't want to pick between these movies. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, you know, you can't beat the original. I'm not gonna be that guy that says that there's a tie because that pisses me off, and you know, you really can't have a third without a first. Toy Story opened up the door for feature-length CGI movies. It was the first ever computer animated movie. Any Toy Story fanatic knows that John Lasseter is the man who we can thank. Like I mentioned earlier, Lasseter was always shooting to revolutionize the film industry and animated movies particularly. We gotta thank Ed Catmull and Steve Jobs for investing in Lasseter's vision. Toy Story is the best case for the Pixar formula. Taking a non-living thing and personifying it, and taking an idea that we all had before and all thought of, being that our toys definitely walk around and talk to each other whenever we're not around. Like, come on, who didn't think that as a kid? Even before Toy Story, kids had to have thought that. You never get lost anywhere in this story, and you remember every single character. The story addresses the purpose that toys have, whenever we all really didn't think that they had much of a purpose in the first place. You can't watch any of these movies and then think of toys the same way afterwards. Name a more iconic Pixar duo than Woody and Buzz. I will wait. Matching up the Old West with sci-fi was really brilliant. We'll never be able to hear any voice in place of Tom Hanks as Woody. Definitely will never be able to hear any person as Buzz Lightyear other than Tim Allen. And if you thought that I loved the side characters in Finding Nemo, the side characters in Toy Story are even more memorable. I wouldn't be able to show you a picture of any of the side characters and you not be able to tell me their name. This film franchise is just that iconic. The Toy Story franchise definitely deserves its own video. Sure, it may have been the first computer animated movie ever, but it still holds up to this day. It was a homage to toys, just like Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a homage to cartoons. One of the most revolutionary movies of all time. It's probably the most groundbreaking animated film to date. And without a doubt, it will always be the best Pixar film of all time. Thank you guys for watching through to the end. Thank you for commenting, and subscribing. Let me know down in the comments what is your favorite Pixar movie of all time. And I'll see y'all on Sunday for the barbecue.